Hello, everyone. I'm Tommy Rosebluth, Program Coordinator at the American Public Gardens Association, and I will be your staff representative during this virtual conference. Before we begin, here are a couple of tips to get the most out of your virtual conference experience. First, if you're experiencing poor audio or video quality, we suggest closing other programs on your computer, especially other browser tabs. Your inbox will still be there at the end of the session, I promise. If you have any other problems or questions, association staff are available to help. Give us a call at 610-708-3010 or send us an email at info@publicgardens.org. Second, while this session has been pre-recorded, the presenters are here with us today as panelists and will be happy to take questions in the live question and answer portions of the session. At some point during this session, the presenters may activate a poll. Poll responses are anonymous, so be sure to let us know how you really feel. Finally, you can submit your questions using Zoom's Q&A function that you will find in your Zoom toolbar. Questions can be submitted anonymously. You can also upvote other questions to indicate you would like to hear them answered. We will try to answer as many questions as we can during the live Q&A portion of this session. Some questions may be answered directly through the Q&A feature. Thank you and enjoy today's session.
Hi, my name is Joanna. I'm the Communications Manager at Laureate Garden. Today I'm going to be talking to you about combating plant blindness with the right presentation. So the agenda is I'm going to talk to you about who this talk is for, what plant blindness is, and who it affects, why I want to talk to you about this topic, and I want to talk to you about what the average visitor's experience is, and then a little bit about how you can present them. So this talk is for a whole bunch of people, communicators, educators, and really anyone who's out in the garden who might encounter a visitor and might have to engage with them. And also it's for really anyone who wants to teach or learn anything that's a big system. So plant blindness, I'm sure you all know, is just the inability to see plants, recognize plants, or tell them apart. The important part, I think, for us is this middle one, the inability to recognize the importance and role of plants. We need people to understand that so they can directly relate their actions to climate change and things like this. So for example, how many people do you know think about their cotton sheets and think, oh, that came partially from a plant? So that's something that's an aspect of plant blindness. So why I'm talking about this topic is that I came to Laureate Garden with no real experience or relationship with plants. I had some plant knowledge, just walking around Home Depot with my mom. But for the most part, I didn't know a lot. I'm also an artist, so features and characteristics are kind of what I pay attention to. I don't know Latin names for plants, and an important part of this entire realization, or how I came about noticing this, is that I had a camera. And so I would go out to the garden and take a picture of something, and I wouldn't know what the name of the plant is. And this is a fictitious example, but I would come into the office, I'd plug in my card, and I'd take a look at things, and I would zoom in. And when I zoomed in, might notice these curlicues. And then I would call someone over because I was so excited, and I'd call over a gardener who I thought knew everything, and I'd say, oh, look at these cool spirals. And they would say, to my surprise, oh, I'd never noticed that. And I'm like, how do these people not notice these things? Thinking that they were all experts at everything, and therefore they saw everything. And so I propose from my experience of how I felt when I started at the garden, and listening to how visitors talking to each other as they walked by. This is how we see the garden on the left, and how visitors see our garden on the right. Obviously, it's varying degrees, but on the left, I'm sure a lot of us could identify every single plant in this picture. On the right, I think that the average visitor might just notice the colors, maybe really accentuated differences in shapes, but maybe that's it. And so because I can't talk to you and show you the experience of a visitor, I have to move to a different topic entirely to show how we can start to talk to people about plants without burdening them with just names, rattling names and pointing and telling them the scientific and Latin name and moving on, because they don't really grasp any of that. So this is how I think we have to start. I'm sure many of you recognize this is a Japanese characters, and I'm going to go and assume that a lot of you don't know what this says. And if I were to give you a test right now, you really wouldn't even know. Even if I told you some of them, maybe you'd remember one or two, but they really mean nothing. So, but if we start to narrow in and we just take a small selection and we talk about the details, we can start to understand how this whole thing works. So if we take it, so one thing is that these characters came from pictures. So there would be a picture of clouds and there's water coming out of it, and it's slowly simplified, and this is the character for rain. And you can see here that there's other characters that follow that rule. This is a picture of a tree. This is the character for a tree, but notice how they just double the character when there's more than one to talk about a pluralistic word or refer to a pluralistic word like woods or geese. And here's something else that reinforces that, bamboo. Here's a horse. We can see here that it's like the main body is represented and then they've got some feet there. Well, here's a bird and shellfish, and they have these feet features. And so we can start to think like, oh, okay, maybe animals are all have some sort of feet in the bottom of them. There's something that ties them all together, all animals together. And then the last thing is that I want to just point out a detail about is this is the symbol for up, and this is the symbol for down. And it's easy to see that if they are opposite words, and the character is just flipped. So what did we learn in this? We learned that about this entire system, what we learned is characters can resemble the objects and words that they mean, and we can see those examples. We understand in this system that characters can duplicate to resemble collective words, so that's another part of the system. Characters can share characteristics that are similar to the word and object types in that group, and that opposite words the characters can just switch. And so we learned some things about how the system works, and this will inform our future encounters with these character types. And I feel confident that if I showed you that slide again with all the characters, you could probably pick out some of them. But this might be where the tree and the woods are, and that was connected because you duplicate it, so we remember the tree because it was easy, it looked like a tree. Then we realized, okay, we can duplicate that and we can get woods. And then, they can also apply to other things. And so we're not going to be able to speak Japanese in any stretch of the imagination, but we're starting to touch pieces of a lattice or a scaffolding to create a system that's slowly going to fill out. If we continue to learn about this, it would slowly fill out and we'd be able to build on connections as we went on. So we can use this kind of idea for teaching people about plants and overcoming plant blindness. And so our main goal is really that visitors go home remembering something remarkable. I don't care what it is. So we can point out details and features. We can help make connections. We can talk about plant names, scientific names if you really want to, but it really is not going to have the same effect. And keep in mind that false connections are okay. And I'll show you that in a second. So we can show here that there's some plants that this is called a pincushion, as the plant name has pincushion in it, the common name, and it looks like a pincushion. And then there's this other plant that if you squeeze it, it smells like something you know about, that you're familiar with. It smells like celery. Sometimes the plants that we see are related to things that we know in the kitchen. Like, for example, this plant is related to garlic. And this looks a lot like asparagus. And people might think that it's asparagus. And I think at first it's okay, because number one, people may not even realize that asparagus is a plant. It's just something that shows up on their plate. They may have never seen asparagus or something come out of the ground like asparagus does. And regardless, it's something remarkable. They walk out and they might tell their buddies, guys, they were growing asparagus over at Lori Garden. And it's okay if people think that it's not that people are dumb, it's that they have a completely different worldview, and therefore they're making different connections and making different associations than what you or I would make, because we know plants, but someone else might know chemistry or construction or something else that we know nothing about. When I first started at Lori Garden, at some point, someone pointed out that that mints have square stems, which totally blew my mind, because it didn't even ever occur to me that there was anything outside a round stem. And when someone pointed that out, that all mints have square stems, I could start identifying, or at least narrowing down the identification for some plants. I knew that this was a mint, and that all mints don't necessarily look alike, but they smell alike. Oh, but they look really different and don't necessarily smell alike. And they look really, really different and smell nothing alike. In fact, this one smells like licorice. Some people might see this and think it's some sort of mushroom or something really exotic. And here's your opportunity to say, you know what, you know this plant. This is what a tulip might look like when it's in a seed form, something that people never get a chance to see. And if you are lucky enough to catch a bee going into a bottle gentian, this will also really blow someone's mind that insects are opening and crawling into something and doing mysterious things inside of plants. Also, people might think that these are two different flowers, and you can give them the tools to kind of do some detective work on their own. And I would also agree these look very different plants. But what you can say is, you know what? You can tell these are related because they all have this this type of seed pod, and you can actually get a clue for this name because they look like cranesbills. And so this plant is commonly referred to as cranesbill. But I don't know if that's a great name for it personally, because I might point out that as these guys turn brown, there's seeds that show up in the bottom, at the bottom base here, and then they catapult them out and fling them far across the way to spread the seed. And then for the rest of the year, which is the majority of the year, they have these beautiful chandeliers. So why it's called the cranesbill, I don't know. It should be called something like the chandelier plant. So we can do this digitally as well for visitors who aren't necessarily in the garden. And it's just about making sure you feel comfortable getting up close and showing people and using the right language. I know that a lot of the communications people might know this, but you know, the gardeners, anyone who notices something different about our feature that's very interesting at plant can contribute to your social media. But you just have to do a couple of things to make sure that they capture it for you, right? For example, on the left-hand side, looks like an 80s dream sequence, and it's just because their lens isn't cleaned off. Every time I take a picture, I clean off my lens. I wipe it on my pants. So just little kind of educations, because the more people you have out there with varying different experiences, the more unique connections you're going to be making, that you can touch more people with that connection. This is another little trick that I've learned about focusing in on things that are really close to you. I have an iPhone, and I wanted to this seed pod that's in the foreground here, not the very bottom right one, but the next one in. I wanted to get a close shot of that, but the other ones were further out, and the phone wanted to focus on that. So this is a way that you can force it to focus on what you wanted. So if something's like this, like a grass or something, you need something solid behind it. So I take my fingers and I hold it. And then if you hold down on the iPhone, it'll do this lock. It doubles that yellow, and then you can see how that comes in really clearly, and you can zoom in. I don't recommend zooming on your phone. Wait till you take the picture and then zoom in. And when you're sharing it, again, I don't focus on the names necessarily. Here, I'm talking about the Virginia bluebell buds, and I think that they look like raisins, so I call them raisin-esque. And people may not, there's more information about this plant further down, but if someone's scrolling through, they'd be like, oh yeah, they do look like raisins, and they can move forward, but that's something remarkable that I think might stick with them. And the other thing is, you know, just again, because people have different experiences, they might say something that's not accurate. And I think it's important that we help people save face. And so we posted this picture of the summer snowflake, and a lot of people thought that it was a lily of the valley. And so here are 3 examples of someone saying, "Oh, lily of the valley, it's my favorite." And I don't need to say anything. I don't have to be like, no, it's the summer snowflake. I said, you know, the second one in the middle, I say, oh, the scale is really confusing. So I can see why you thought that. No, this is actually a summer snowflake. It's not lily of the valley. So you want to make sure that it's a good experience for people. They feel comfortable being vulnerable, and then they can make the connect. They can, you know, express new connections to you, and you can help adjust it a little bit. So what do we want people to come away with, whether or not it's in the garden or on social media? We want them to remember something remarkable, and remarkable means it could be good or bad. It's just something that you want to remark about, and that has stickiness, and that's the stuff that's going to stay with them. We want people to have connections with things that they already know. So we're helping people connect the baptisia to the asparagus, and that's a good connection to start out with. They can build on that later. And then just the awareness that that there is a plant world, and it's really cool. And they might have picked up some tools or little features that the next time they're out, they might notice it. And then the last thing, you know, I know that we always go to plant names, but at the end of the day, the plant names weren't even that important. Thank you very much.
Hello. Thanks so much, Joanna. So it looks like we got a couple questions in the Q&A box. Did you want to address a few of those?
Okay, yeah. Oh, sure.
So the first question was about, do you have any resources you could recommend about plant blindness teaching? And we have a question about wanting to address that concept with docents. Do you have any resources you'd recommend?
I don't have resources for plant blindness in particular, but I think that stuff about user experience is something that can kind of change the way that you look at presentation. So it's something that you associate with digital development. But user experience is really thinking about how someone else thinks about something and where you have to go for them to kind of follow you and understand. There is one marketing book that I think of, and it's called Made to Stick. It's by Chip and Dan Heath, and it's about, I think the subtitle is Why Some Ideas Live and Some Die. But it's about stickiness of ideas, the remarkability of ideas, and it gives examples of the little things that people have done in the marketing world to make something stick with the public and have some staying power and connect to other things that are going on in their head, in their experience.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. And we also had a question about what's the feedback you've gotten from Hort staff there?
You know, we're just different people. I have a different tour than the horticulturalists there. I don't think that they think it's dumbing down. I know the plants very well, and I don't get any bad negative feedback. I'm trying to think about, I think that they think that the common names are confusing. I do get that feedback, and I often have hard times following their conversations because I don't know the Latin names, and that's what they're talking through. But when it comes to, I do listen to the difference in how they might talk and how I would talk to somebody in the garden, and sometimes I do jump in if I happen to be there. I do jump in and I'll say like, "Oh, she's talking about the pink one that you're referring to," right, to help them out. But no, I don't think that they think of it as dumbing down, because it might be that I'm lucky that I work with people who find those details really interesting too, and they love teaching people in any way possible. So I might be just lucky. We have a very small staff, so.
And then I also see there's a question in chat that was sent to me about, you know, what can individuals or institutions do to reduce plant blindness? Like what would be your top, you know, 1 or 2 recommendations?
I think it's like loosen up. I mean, I think it's about play, really. You know, like, yeah, like, don't these look like chandeliers? Just because you're a horticulturalist doesn't mean you can't say that. No one's gonna think down on you about it. And if they do, like, who cares? The point is that if you approach looking at plants and nature as something that's fun, and we're just thinking about adults here, like, adults are totally okay with saying with someone who they approached and might think is a scientist, they're intimidated. I really think that especially people who fancy themselves as a gardener at home, you know, they're intimidated, I think. And when you respond to them in a non-intimidating way, then suddenly they're willing to be more vulnerable and ask more questions. And you can say, doesn't this look like chandeliers, or doesn't it look like asparagus, or, you know, things like this, and it kind of shifts the entire mood of the conversation.
See if there's any other questions that have come in. Sorry, I'm just looking through the Q&A feature here.
Oh, there's this, I see one, the pictures of the photos.
Yeah, did you want to address that one?
I take a lot of the pictures I take is with the phone, and as long as you're concentrating on the quality, because there's a marketing aspect to that too, right? I mean, it doesn't seem that way, but you know, the people who study design will tell you that it's a microsecond that someone that you make an impression on the quality about something. If you get something from direct mail And it, you know, it's just like something that looks like, like something cheap, like the, you know, the used car guy down the street. And then there's a design that comes in from Tiffany's. The design tells you what it's like, and the quality of the quality tells you what the quality of the design, how crisp it looks and how nicely it's done, immediately tells you, makes you have a respect for it, and makes you be more open for it. And so I think that your iPhone or your regular phones are very powerful if you make sure that you practice and do it well. Make sure your lens is clean, make sure that it's in focus. Make sure you get close enough to it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times like people take a picture of oh, look at this plant, and it's like just a sea of green. They can see it because our eyes are much more adept at seeing depth, but your phone can't. So they're taking a picture and they know where it is in the picture, so they see it. But get on the ground. Like, I'm constantly on the ground, like getting close-up pictures of something, and your phone is fine. Yes, of course, a nicer camera does, but that shouldn't be your barrier. You can get so much from your phone. You can get, I'd say, anything that a common visitor would notice, you can get with your phone. So no, I don't think that you need a special camera for that.
Okay. Well, I think that we only have a few minutes. I'm not seeing any more questions, so definitely want to thank you so much, Joanna, for this wonderful presentation. And if you'd like to keep the discussion going, we can click the live discussions tab on the conference website and start a topic.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to email me, it's just joanna@luriegarden.org. So it's very easy.
Absolutely. And we'd also like to thank our education and communication track sponsor, Lake Flato. And join us at 4 p.m. coming up in a few minutes for our special session on how to waive admission, deliver mission, and keep the lights on before we wrap up the day with a virtual conference send-off at 4:45 Eastern. And again, thanks so much, Joanna, for this wonderful.
My pleasure.